As Mozambique begins to recover from the devastation of Hurricane Idai, a closer look at how the UN World Food Programme and the International Federation of the Red Cross are tackling the huge challenges ahead. On this World Water Day, focusing on the importance of water as a human right, not a privilege. And what's behind Cape Town's booming art market? Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McQuarrie. This is Africa 54. Water and food shortages are stoking frustrations in Mozambique. Large parts of southern Africa are scrambling for survival following a powerful cyclone that killed hundreds of people. Land and Environment Minister Celso Correia says some 15,000 people are still missing. The Red Cross has deployed 2 major response units to Mozambique's port city of Beira to help thousands of people affected by Cyclone Idai. The Red Cross units are expected to provide basic sanitation facilities for up to 20,000 people and produce about 225,000 liters of clean water each day. That's enough to help 15,000 people. Aid officials say survivors are clinging to treetops. Some are trapped on the rooftops of homes, submerged in flood waters. Idai hit Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and Malawi on March 14th, carrying sustained winds of up to 177 kilometers per hour and bringing torrential rain. The combined death toll reportedly stands at around 437 people. The United Nations says this could be one of the worst ever disasters to strike the southern hemisphere. The devastation to Mozambique from Cyclone Idai has made getting aid to survivors extremely difficult. Much of the infrastructure has been destroyed, and the heavy rains afterward have made ground travel nearly impossible. Meanwhile, people are hot and hungry. VOA senior analyst Jeffrey Young spoke with officials from the UN World Food Programme and the International Federation of the Red Cross about the huge challenges they are facing.
In the Mozambique port city of Beira and across the countryside, the devastation caused by tropical cyclone Idai and subsequent heavy rains has hampered the ability of first responders and relief groups to reach survivors. The huge logistical problems faced by aid organizations are described via Skype from Nairobi by the International Federation of the Red Cross's Yuluj Ishimwe.
So many people who need humanitarian assistance are cut off from aid because the roads leading to their villages have been destroyed by the floods or are blocked by falling trees or debris. So the main challenge has been the challenge of access. This means that the only way to move in country is to move by helicopters or by boats.
The storm hit Mozambique on March 14. Since then, thousands of people have had little or no food, clean water, medicine, and other essentials. And the victims are spread out over a large area, 55,000 square kilometers, as described via Skype from Johannesburg by UN World Food Programme Southern Africa Director Lola Castro.
It's quite amazing. When you fly over, you have people on trees, people on the roofs, basically trying to survive with the few things they put up there and hoping that the waters will not rise anymore, like it has happened.
Medical aid for the sick and wounded, clean food and water, and shelters for the homeless are the most immediate needs. But in the days ahead, the contamination of water supplies presents other possibly deadly risks. Again, the Red Cross's Yuluj Ishimwe.
We're talking about a number of waterborne diseases. So in the case of malaria, for example, we are providing mosquito nets so that people are protected from mosquito bites. For other diseases from contaminated waters, our teams, our volunteers have been distributing chlorine so that the water people are drinking can be purified.
The Red Cross has deployed sanitation kits to prevent diseases and thousands of tents and temporary structures to house the homeless. Even more will be needed to sustain Idai's survivors. They have to somehow restore their own ability to feed themselves. as the WFP's Lola Castro points out.
They were about to harvest this month there in this region of Mozambique and also in the area of Zimbabwe. They basically have lost all the harvest, but also all their stocks. So basically, at this moment, they need to plant immediately. But can they plant? It seems the river Pungwe has reached a highest level in 200 years.
She joins other aid experts in saying that a concerted international effort is needed, first, to help cyclone survivors stay alive, and then to rebuild and improve infrastructure so they can better withstand the weather's rage. Jeffrey Young, VOA News, Washington.
Northern Australia is bracing for a powerful cyclone that is expected to hit on Saturday. Authorities have begun evacuating about 2,000 people from areas in Cyclone Trevor's projected path as preparations in Australia are underway. 3 southern African countries continue to struggle with death and destruction brought on by Cyclone Idai. Here's VOA's Zlatitsa Hoke.
Australia's Bureau of Meteorology said Thursday that Cyclone Trevor, with winds gusting up to 260 kilometers per hour, is expected to bring heavy rainfall and a dangerous storm surge. Officials have declared emergency in part of the west coast of the Gulf of Carpentaria, where Trevor is expected to make landfall.
The Bureau of Meteorology is forecasting that the cyclone will make landfall between Borroloola and Groote Island during Saturday as a Category 4 severe tropical cyclone, with marine conditions in the Gulf deteriorating from this morning.
Meanwhile, Zimbabwe, Mozambique and Malawi are still struggling with floods and a mounting death toll a week after Cyclone Idai lashed southern Africa. The official death toll in the 3 countries surpassed 500 on Thursday, with hundreds more feared dead in towns and villages that were completely submerged. A volunteer in Chimanimani says residents cannot make enough graves fast enough for all the dead.
Because of this, we are tired from working. That's why we decided to put 2 bodies in one grave. We were trying to make it easier because digging is hard without any mechanical aid to remove debris where the bodies were trapped.
Cyclone Idai made landfall on the coast of central Mozambique on March the 14th, unleashing winds of more than 117 kilometers per hour and torrential rains that created an inland ocean across 3 nations. The efforts to rescue people trapped by the water are still underway, while the region struggles to find shelter for those who lost homes. The United Nations World Food Programme has delivered food to shelters and is airdropping supplies to people stranded in inaccessible areas.
Our plans now in Mozambique alone are to help between 600,000 and possibly up to 1.7 million people for 3 months with food support, which is why we are appealing to both governments and individuals for financial support that we need to help all those people in a catastrophic situation.
The U.S. Agency for International Development has mobilized $700,000 in total assistance for emergency water, sanitation and shelters in the 3 affected countries. Zlatitsa Hope, VOA News, Washington.
Well, thousands of people gathered Friday for a mass funeral in a New Zealand cemetery where 26 of the 50 victims of a mass shooting in a mosque last Friday were buried. The youngest victim buried was just 3 years old. Earlier, at an outdoor service across the mosque where the fatal attack happened in Christchurch, Imam Gamil Fouda addressed a crowd of thousands.
We are broken-hearted, but we are not broken. We are alive. We are together. We are determined to not let anyone divide us.
Well, Fouda also acknowledged the New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern for holding our families close and honoring us with a simple scarf. He said the Prime Minister's leadership was a lesson for the world. Women around New Zealand wore headscarves Friday to show their support and respect for the Muslim community. Many from other communities participated in Friday's prayers.
So yeah, very, very sad day today, as it's only been a week for those poor people that have gone, but happy days ahead. I I hope that this was a way of bringing people together, and it just had to happen in a bad way, like it took for our family to pass away, for everyone to come together.
Prime Minister Aden imposed an immediate ban on all military-style semi-automatic and automatic assault rifles. Parliament is expected to approve the proposed laws when it reconvenes in mid-April. Authorities have charged 28-year-old Australian Brenton Harrison Tarrant with murder in connection with the March 15th attacks on the Al Noor and Linwood mosques. The self-proclaimed white nationalist did not enter a plea in his initial court appearance the day after the attack. His next court appearance is April the 5th. Somali-American Representative Ilhan Omar, a Democrat from Minnesota and one of the first Muslim women to serve in the U.S. Congress, has ignited a controversy with her tweets and public statements. Many in her party were infuriated by her comments suggesting U.S. lawmakers' support for Israel was swayed by money and that some members of Congress had a dual allegiance to the U.S. and Israel. VOA's Catherine Gibson reports from Omar's diverse district, where the Congresswoman has opened up a difficult conversation for Jews and Muslims.
The heart of the nation's largest Somali-American community that sent one of its own to the U.S. Congress just 4 months ago.
Because we're going to Washington, everyone!
For these refugees, many of whom have lived in the U.S. for decades, that joy was short-lived.
I don't know, maybe...
The reason there is a lot of attention on Ilhan Omar is because a lot of differences came into the Congress. A Muslim woman, a hijab woman, an African woman. A lot of differences. That's what brings attention.
Just weeks into her term, Omar had to apologize for tweets and public statements challenging the U.S.-Israel relationship, facing congressional disapproval for crossing the line into anti-Semitism.
We were watching the criticism about Ilhan Omar, but we do not believe she is behaving with hatred toward Jewish people. I think that's a misinterpretation against her.
Somali Americans, one of many groups Omar represents, in a district that includes young, educated professionals and a strong Jewish community that was deeply hurt by Omar's allegations.
The language really echoed upon anti-Semitic tropes that have been used throughout the centuries, calls accusations of Jews of having dual loyalty to foreign countries, specifically Israel, or Jews in their association with money and buying political favor.
Olitsky is one of many local leaders in discussion with Omar in recent weeks as the district's close Somali and Jewish communities look for a way to discuss policy without descending into hate.
There is no reason why Israel, Palestine, the United States relationship with Israel should not be the subject of robust debate and discussion. That's the hallmark of American democracy.
In a recent meeting to discuss her remarks, Hunnigs showed Omar photographs to make the point that Jewish families are loyal to the United States.
So my cousin was killed in action November 16, 1944.
But Khalid Mohammed, who worked on Omar's campaign, says the former refugee has an obligation to challenge U.S. foreign policy.
When you see her talking about the injustices happening across the globe, it's not because she just saying it for the sake of saying it. She deeply cares about it because she's been through a struggle.
For voters here in one of the most liberal districts in the nation, that willingness to challenge political norms resonates.
She said something a lot of people were thinking. I'm like, wow, that must have took guts, right, for her to say it. I'm like, proud of her.
But if voters tire of the constant controversies, Democratic challengers to her congressional seat are already waiting.
I could count probably 5 to 10 off the top of my head right now of folks who are already considering running.
A battle for a diverse district where foreign, not domestic policy could be the focus. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Now, coming up, is water a human right or a privilege? We'll explain. But first, here are Friday's headlines.
voices, we're talking about the news and issues you're talking about.
Sharing stories of development and growth across Africa, around the world, and in our lives. Topics that inform, empower,
and change the rules.
It's time for Our Voices.
With me, Haiti Adams Fitzpatrick.
And Hadiza Kiari.
And Ayan Bior.
And Orion Itangi Shaka.
It's time for Our Voices.
Friday is World Water Day, and this year's theme is No One Left Behind. But according to a report from the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund and the World Health Organization, nearly 1 billion people are living without access to clean drinking water. Viewers Arashara Basadi has our report.
Ana Diona used to fetch water from this river in Mozambique, where people bathe and wash clothes.
Could you imagine waking up in your household and having to walk miles to get a clean glass of water? Or better yet, having to walk miles to even find a safe place to go to the restroom?
She walked 15 minutes from the steep riverbank, carrying a water jug on her head. Until a year ago, her children would brush their teeth and wash with it. Today, her children drink clean water for little money from this nearby water kiosk run by a woman and locally built.
Where there's water, everything is possible. But in reality, without water, you can't do anything. It is a complete barrier to development and good health and productivity.
Jason Brooks is Senior Technical Advisor for Water at ADRA International. Together with local communities, the nonprofit group digs wells that pump clean water to kiosks like the one in Mozambique. Brooks says projects like this one create jobs for about 7,000 people around the world.
We can't do anything without the local community and the leaders of that community who have to be responsible for maintaining access to safe water supply.
Because collecting water comes with cost.
We can start with the girl child and her inability to go to school because she has to help the parents with household chores. And fetching water is one of those. Some of these individuals are having to walk 3, 4, 5 kilometers a day, one way, just to get water. Allow that girl child to get pregnant. She becomes an even bigger victim when she has to now show up at a rural clinic where there is no water.
Aid workers say clean water is scarce in remote health clinics.
Think about all the things a hospital does with water. There's hand washing, there's cleaning of equipment, there's cleaning of surfaces and the floors, there's drinking water. You might need to take water with your medication, so it needs to be clean.
Experts say building water infrastructure is worth the cost.
If you have money to build roads, you have money to build wells. If you have money to invest in internet, you can find money for a latrine. We just want to reprioritize investment to make sure that the needs of people are being met.
The United Nations calls the need for clean water a basic human right and proposed expanding access to all people by 2030. Until then, World Water Day is a reminder of the work ahead and the 780 million people worldwide in need of help. Arash Arabasadi, VOA News.
Well, now here's what's trending. Collectors from America and Europe are scouring Cape Town's booming art market in search of deals. Dozens of city center venues, including the Association of Visual Arts Gallery and the converted Grail silos of the Tides Museum of Contemporary African Art, are catering to art aficionados seeking a good investment on the general viewing public. A favorable rand to dollar exchange rate is a lure for a foreign bargain hunter. South Africa's art market was valued at around 2 to 3 billion rand a year. Well, next up, the athleisure trend doesn't seem to be waning, and even New York Fashion Week designers are realizing that to keep their customers happy, they need to keep them comfortable too. Sportswear references are popping up on the runway in the form of parkas and the sports bras. Shoes are more comfortable, with platform sneakers and Mary Jane-style high heels as examples. All agree, though, that the trick is blending comfort with beautiful design. Finally, the grapevines of Tuscany not only produce world-renowned wines, their twisting tendrils have inspired scientists to create a climbing robot. Researchers here at the Center of the Microbiorobotics near Pisa were drawn to the idea of plants because their movement is linked to growth. They continuously adapt and morph in the space of their external environment. Unlike animals, they usually cannot change their location, but they can grow in a different direction, or in the case of carnivorous plant, close their petals around their prey. The team is hoping the work will lead eventually to a multitude of applications, such as wearable, flexible, orthopedic supports. And that's what's trending today. Now, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, words that evoke colorful images of lost riches. The debate continues over where the gardens were located, or even if they existed at all. Researchers have collated decades of research to produce what they claim is the most stunningly accurate portrayal of what the gardens looked like when they were built 2.5 millennia ago. Henry Ridgwell picks up the story.
A garden known throughout the world for its beauty, a name now synonymous with the disappeared riches of an ancient kingdom. This animation is claimed to be the closest representation yet of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. The design by computer scientists from the University of Northampton is based on over 20 years' research.
It's not an artist's imagination. It doesn't come from an artist's imagination. It comes from archaeologists based on evidence.
The gardens were built by King Nebuchadnezzar II, ruler of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, around 600 BC. Ancient Greek texts describe the gardens as one of the 7 wonders of the world, suggesting they survived hundreds of years. Historically, they were thought to lie in the ancient city of Babylon, south of present-day Baghdad. But some scholars now believe they were located further north, in what is now Iraq's Nineveh province, around the city of Mosul.
We don't know exactly where the site is. I've made a suggestion. The site has been, it had many layers on top of the Assyrian things. We don't know how long the garden lasted.
Mosul and much of the surrounding area was devastated during the battle against Islamic State, aided by the charity the Amar Foundation, which aims to rebuild communities torn apart by that conflict. The historians hope to build on this initial research.
It's positive and it has a social impact, which we are trying to emphasize on that, make the connection happen with the past, because people lose this connection because of the many wars they have, and this is unfortunate.
So could these virtual worlds one day be discovered in reality?
I don't actually think that it would be possible to find a garden now. We do have some quite good ground sensing equipment that might just help, but people will rob stones away and put them in their houses. So anything that was stone there has been robbed long ago.
Nevertheless, it's hoped the project will help to educate and inspire further appreciation of Iraq's rich cultural heritage. Henry Ridgwell for VOA News, London.
And we end our program today with the emerging and exciting Ghanaian band, Fra, and their music video, Happy Yourself. From all of our entire team here in Washington, have a good night and a happy weekend.